that land like a man on the run, riding down Highway 61. Sides of the roads all lined with fields, nothing but sunset in the windshield. Feel it as soon as I ride into town. This is where I go to slow down. Miles and miles of soybeans and corn. I'm in the place where the blues was born. About a mile from the big muddy river, place I'll always remember. Cabin on the lake and a fishing pole. Forever here I'll rest my soul. I can feel my worries drift away from being out in the sun all day. No matter where in the world I go, I'll always find home on the banks of that oxbow.
What's up, guys? Justin Berry here, back at the OKC show, doing tons of episodes for you guys. I got myself Justin Berry.
Brad Chappell here.
And we did a live feed yesterday. I'm sure y'all probably seen it. Time gap between the live feed and now from the show that we're recording when we air it. But we reached out and had everybody that was tuning in. We was live recording Todd Huckabee interviewing Robert Carlile here that you got in front of you here. Guys, thanks for coming on for sure.
Absolutely.
But we have some questions that the viewers wanted to engage in y'all and see what y'all had to say.
Wonderful.
So I guess we just get it started off here, go from there. I even wrote down who questioned it. And this can go for both of y'all. Both y'all can engage on it. It's not just either one. So a guy named Heath Riley questioned, when hunting wide open scattered crappie that are not on any structure, how far out do you set your live scope distance forward and how fast are you going?
30 foot. 30 foot.
That's my answer, 30 foot, and as fast as the conditions will let me.
Do you try to always search in the wind or
Always into the wind.
going
It's
in?
always about boat control.
I just had that.
Yeah.
That was on my own there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, and you and I talked about this quite a bit off the air, but people's boat control is horrible,
Mm-hmm.
and we watch these people, and
Yeah, watch me probably.
if they're going sideways or with the wind or something, by the time they see it, they're over it,
Right.
and then they're circling back around, and
Yep.
they're like, well, "Where'd it go? I followed my same track." Man, that joker was a quarter mile away from me.
Yeah.
Something along that lines too. I'm gonna throw out there. When we're talking about live scoping and the forward view, looking at them. When you're going up to that fish, would you rather try to catch him when he's directly in front of the boat, or to the left or right side, or does it really matter? Do you have a preference? Both of you guys.
I try to keep them directly in front of the boat. That's my preferred place. It's actually easier to catch them on the right side of the boat. It seems
if you're
like
right-handed.
Yeah, and the left side if you're left-handed.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll work center to the right.
From my aspect, because I'm not going and doing what he's doing, I've
Right.
got clients in the boat.
Right.
So I've got both. I've got one on the right and one on the left. So I'm kind of splitting it. I'm like, all right, it's your turn.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, now it's your turn.
Sure.
And
Right.
so it's different what I do as guiding.
On the
as
tournament side or fishing side, yeah.
yeah, because, you know, what he's doing, it doesn't matter if it's just him that catches all of the fish or if it's just his partner that catches all the fish. It doesn't matter. From a guide standpoint, I'm doing both.
Mhm.
And I haven't seen that as far as it making a difference in the actual catchability of that fish, whether it's straight in front of you, left or right.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right, guys. Next question I got is from Eric Henry. He asked, what's your opinion about chasing a fish with live scope mounted on one pole? What's the pros and cons, in your opinion, about a pole mount?
As a guide, I don't like it. I've tried two different ones. They take way too much time to pick up and put down and then everything else. So right now mine's mounted directly onto the trolling motor. But the cornfield crappie, the one that they have that is part of your trolling motor where it's not separate, you pick your trolling motor up, put it down, it's off to the side, and it can independently move.
Yeah, they got remote input control on that.
Yeah. And he also told me, he said, next thing it's going to be voice commanded.
What?
That
what
would
he
be
said.
cool.
That will be cool.
Left.
Right. But for me, that one's going to be the one. And the reason for me as a guide, because I'm not tournament fishing. Tournament fishing, you can always just be right up front.
Mm-hmm.
So I may, one day I may have 2 guys that can stand up there. And so at that point, I'll be using it just as the trolling motor does.
Right.
But the other aspect is that sometimes I'll get a guy who's 83, and he is not going to stand on the nose of the boat.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to either sit back a little bit, or he may even want to sit in the passenger seat with a single console boat and just fish.
Right.
He's getting tired after an hour or something. Well, now I can pull up, point it into the wind, I can spot lock, and then I can move this around, lock it on something that's off to this side of the boat so that both clients can be fishing it, as opposed to them sitting up there in rough water.
Right.
Fishing forward. So the pole part, to me, I mean, it's the same concept as a pole, but it's just, to me, it's a lot easier. As a guide, everything, time is money. I want to do my job and get off the water as quick as I can. This is going to save me time by not having to pick up an additional thing.
Okay.
Sure.
Robert?
For me, I always run it on the trolling motor. That's my answer. That's the quickest, easiest. With that being said, this year I'm going to run 2 mounts. There's going to be one on the trolling motor, and there's going to be a separate pole mount. Because there's different applications. I'm going to be fishing most of the time on the bow of the boat, but there may be a time that I need to spot lock and run a pole mount. And if I can only choose one, I'd always choose the trolling motor mount. That's going to be my go-to on it. But with that being said, I mean, the pole mount is a tool for just like anything. If I want to spot lock and I see a brush pile, just like what Todd was saying, I may need to spot lock here and fish off the left side, or spot lock and fish off the right side. So there's the pole is a good tool. I don't know that it's going to be my primary tool. It's not my first time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they're useful.
You're just trying to cover all the bases.
As a tournament angler,
Right.
I mean, you just got to be prepared for anything.
He's covering all the bases.
And as techie as he
Right.
is, he's going to end up with about 12 of them. He's going to have a 360 live scope.
All right.
Man.
He's going to have 6 across the front. Come on.
That's
big
awesome.
6.
All right, next question we got here. Winter locations. I hear all the time that they move to the basin of the lake. He finds them more on the remaining weed line edges more so than the deep. Explain y'all's thoughts.
Well, I've been preaching this for close to 20 years about shallow, look shallower than what you think they're going to be. Now, I understand that if you're in some of these far northern states, or like Jerry Hancock down at Lake Fork, those fish down there are deep. I think those fish down there are deep. My opinion is because of the number of trophy bass down there. I think those fish just behave differently than a crappie in a normal lake that doesn't have that. But, he's talking about finding those fish along the old existing weed line is because it's shallower than out deep. Those fish, they do not have to go deep. They can, but they don't have to. Right now, even though it's, yesterday the high was, 29 here.
Yeah, it was like under 30.
Freezing, snow, sleet, everything else. I still, after we left here, I got some texts last night from guys that went to their dock. Because in Oklahoma, we can have a covered dock. They'd go to their dock and they'd be like, dude, we caught them, and we caught them shallow. Okay, so there's a lot of shallow fish this time of the year, so you don't always have to look deep.
And that's always a question that comes up is the basin. We're talking about going down towards the dam. And I always check down towards the dam. If I go to a new lake, I'm going to end up there, but I'm always going to start halfway up away from the dam and work up. And it never, as of yet, doing this for a year, hit 75 lakes this year. As of yet, I've not found them down by the dam, not in the deep basin. But that being said, moving up it, they like the channel. The channel's a highway for them, so they're using those channels. And I find that channels are important. That may be a 25-foot deep channel, but they may be 6 foot deep in the water column in a 25-foot depth. And then sometimes they may be up shallower than that. They may be out on the flats outside of the channel. But I think the channel is the thing. And I like secondary channels right now, those forks. Anytime that I can find a pattern. Anytime that I can find a feature to where it breaks off of it, I'm going to focus on those areas.
Big highway.
Great point.
Yeah.
Look for the highway.
Great point. From Rick Matthews, having a hard time catching crappie during the winter. Any pointers on that?
Slow down.
Slow down.
Exactly.
You know, like we were talking yesterday, less is more. And a lot of the things that I've talked about in seminars for the last 20 years is not something that I invented or anything. It was something that I stumbled upon because of clients, to be honest with you. You know, we're out there fishing, say we're two-poling with 2 jigs, and I get a client that's like, man, I got to sit down for a second. And he sits down and he lays his rods down, but he's still got his hands on them. And they're perfectly still against the side of the boat. He's not jigging it or moving it at all. And all of a sudden he starts catching more fish than the other guys. So you're like, oh, okay, I need to slow down, you know. And the other one, especially here in Oklahoma, if you go to lakes like Worcester, Eufaula, a lot of our popular lakes, these old timers, of course, they're not live scoping, but they're still catching amazing numbers of good-sized fish, and they're throwing a jig and a cork.
Jig and a cork.
If that doesn't show you that that slow, not up and down presentation is important, go to Worcester and go up in some of like the Fush and some of these places where Robert guides. Look at their reports on Facebook. They're catching them better with a jig and a cork than any other way. Now, some of them are live scoping and they're saying, okay, they're 20 feet out that way. Here's a little pod, jig and a cork, and then they're letting it sit. Just like you would with a rod right now, where you're reaching out there, putting it on his nose. They're doing it, but further away with a jig and a cork. And they're not moving it at all. It's just sitting there, and they're just waiting for that fish to come up. And so less is more, slow down. I mean, and downsize in some conditions. You know, like on a Eufaula, you don't have to. On other lakes, that's the whole key on some lakes.
Eufaula, you don't have to downsize during
Not
the
in
winter?
the winter, no.
Interesting.
Our crappie down there, when you clean them, they got 4 or 5 inch shad on them.
I'll be darned.
They're eating big baits because, you know, if you think about it, right now there are no shad fry. Everything they're eating is big.
Matured up.
Yeah.
Robert?
For winter's a tough time. I mean, the bite changes. So I do downsize. I'm running a 30-second hair jig right now, so that's an important thing. But I'm not so hung up on colors as I am profiles, and I change a lot of profiles. I have ultra small. I have 32nd ounce hair jigs, and I also have 3.5 inch curly tails. So I run both gamuts of it. In Mississippi just recently, most of the fish that we caught out there were, and we're talking 3 pound plus fish, we caught, between the group of us that went out there, we had about 72 pound plus fish, and we had 7 that were 3 pound plus. And in that time, we caught most of them on a hair jig, small hair jig. But there was moments in the day that the pattern changed. They didn't want a hair jig. And so I started, and I seen them chasing shad. Just what you said, they're eating shad. These are big fish, they're aggressive. And so I changed that 3.5 inch swim bait, and all of a sudden I started catching the fish. Noah guy that went with us, he caught his personal best down there on a big 3.5 inch curly tail. So I think the pattern changes throughout the day. I think as the water warms up, they're going to be a little bit more aggressive. But overall, the lakes that I fished, I found that the smaller baits, the smaller profiles are going to be what's more important.
What is a small profile in your mind? An inch?
Three quarters to an inch.
Very small.
3/4 to an
And,
inch.
you know, back to the whole profile deal, that's one of the things that intrigues me the most about this new technology of watching them, is that you can take a bait like the beaver bottom bait that's got a big flat tail on it, or you can take a bait like a muddy water bait that's the exact same color, the same length, same thickness, and there's days where one profile will outperform the other profile.
Absolutely.
And I don't understand it.
I think it's especially, I relate a muddy water situation to a beaver bottom. I like the vibration that they create. I think that they feel that as much. The lateral lines in the fish are obviously there for a reason. I don't know if they're seeing that these things are happening 6 foot away, but they're feeling, they know that it's going on. And I can give you a perfect example. Joey and I were fishing together on a lake. just recently, the one you asked about. And what happened was I went back to chain some baits. It was a tough day. We were running these little big hair jigs. Joey's up there chasing this big fish. We know it's a big fish on it with a hair jig. And he's fished for it for 10 or 15 minutes. We got the video footage of it. I walk up with a redneck rubber with beaver bottom because I felt like the water was muddy and he wasn't reacting to the hair jig. And within 2 minutes of the time that I walked to the deck and started fishing for it, he's been fishing for it for 15 minutes. I had a 313 on the deck. So
Really?
Yeah.
I think that where somebody needs a pickup of what he's talking about, and Todd as well, is you keep changing until you get bit.
Yeah.
Don't just live and die by one particular thing out there.
Well, and that's what's amazing. And, yesterday in my seminar, and I was doing this last year at Grizzly, you remember.
Yep.
I told everybody as soon as I got up on stage, hey, this seminar is going to be about where I was right, where I was wrong. And I think that any pro that doesn't get ahead of the game, I told you all this a year ago,
Yep.
and admit where you were wrong, you're going to lose some credibility. And so that's what I did on every seminar I did last year. I was like, okay, here's where I was wrong. Because like on UFollow, where I spend 90% of my time, I can find fish that will eat a big bait every day. But I may have to move a lot. I'm burning a lot of gas. I'm running the boat. Now I can go to a spot, and if I see, all right, guys, there's 1,000 fish roaming around in this area. I'm not going to take y'all on a long boat ride and freeze you to death. We're going to stay here and figure out what it takes.
Yep.
And so now, if you look at my rods that are over there in the booth, I've got some small baits and big bait both on my rod. I would have never done that, ever, in a million years up until last year. Now I've got both. And what's weird is that each fish, if we're watching them, which we don't watch them a lot guided. Once I get into a good area, we just go back to fishing. But what's weird is that one will want that little bait, and the next one wants a little bait, and the next one wants a little bait, and in your mind you think, oh, I got this dialed in. Until the next 5 eat the big bait, and you're like, this doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's different, and people think it has to do with, the pressure changing, or bluebird skies, or this front came through, or it rained, or all these other elements. That's not it, because, there's probably 4,000 to 5,000 people in this building. We're all humans. We're all under the same conditions. We're all under the same lights, same temperature, same dew point. Everything's the same. But yet, if we all went to the snack bar, more than likely out of us 5, we're going to order probably 4 different things.
It's a great explanation right there.
So they're all different. They all want something different. And so that's why the old guys that were fishing the docks, that would sit there and have a little pocket full, and they'd change this, they'd catch 1 or 2, then they'd change, catch 1 or 2. And it's because they were catching all of them, but they were catching them on what that fish wanted that day.
Right.
I got one thing real quick that we want to do a product spotlight real quick, and I know you brought a pole here to actually do a product spotlight.
Yeah. What you got back there?
We're super proud to have Huckabee rods on board with the Crappie Connection this year.
Awesome.
And, one of the things that we're going to do during our shows is actually show some of the products that our sponsors are helping us out with, because we need sponsors to continue with this show. So
Absolutely. We're really excited to partner with you.
Yeah.
Appreciate the
Thank you,
opportunity.
guys.
Yeah, thank you.
But yeah, this is just a little 8-footer.
Yeah.
What they handed me. We've got everything from a 5.5-footer, which Joe Pretenza designed, the Crappie Ninja dock shooting extraordinary guy. We've got the 6-shooter, which was originally designed for shooting docks, but now has become more of a casting rod.
Yeah.
We've got 7-footers, 8-footers, 9-footers. The 9-footer is really one of our, other than the longer rods, is one of our best sellers ever. We've got 10s, 10.5, 11, 12, and we've even got a 13 now.
What about that pole there, Todd? What would you do with that pole?
What guys are doing with this is actually jigging cork.
Okay.
It's 8 foot. You can either use a fixed cork or, and so you don't have the fatigue of that longer rod while you're fishing and jigging a cork. That's what this one's pretty much designed for. All of our rods from 9 and up are designed just for jigging. But like I say, these guys that are these tournament guys, they're wanting 12, 13, 19 and a half, 27-foot rods, because they're like, all right, I see one over there that you're after. I'm just going to reach over there and catch him before you do.
Yeah.
But no, and where it'll stop, who knows? But we're trying to keep up with it by having a 12 and a 13.
That's what you got to do.
That still have that backbone that these guys are looking for, and I think that's what sets us apart from some of the other companies, is that we're able to produce a rod that is that long, that is that light, that still has that backbone.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the questions that, speaking of the 13, one of the questions from Jerry Guineas, he said, how's the 13-footer that's lighter than the 12-footer doing?
Well, as you see, we don't have any here.
Yeah.
We're sold out of them. We'll actually have some this next Monday. And I'm not going to say it was an accident, but so how that happened is that to go to that length, they needed to use a different material. And so they didn't invent a new material, but they switched the material up to give it that extra strength, because the longer you go, the better chance you've got a breaking point.
Right.
And so they kind of created a new strain of this graphite, and it's people are blown away. They pick it up and they're like, wow. And of course that's why we're sold out of them.
Right.
At Wally's deal at Crappie Expos when we introduced it, and we just got bombarded by it.
I fish with their rods, and I've had a lot of opportunities to change rods, and I stay where I'm at for the simple reason that I believe in what Huckabee rods are, let alone the relationships that I have with both Ken and Todd. But I've got to talk a little bit about these rods, and length is important. There's times when absolutely that 13-foot rod is the kick. That's what I'm going to fish with. But that 13-foot rod being lighter, still, it has more leverage. As you catch big fish, it's harder to get them into the boat as I'm boat flipping them. I don't run a net, so every fish that I'm fishing for is being boat flipped in. Grenada this year, the fish were spooky. They were out there in 6 foot of water, 6 foot of water, and they were 3 foot deep, and we're running in 2 foot rollers, and it's hard to get to those fish and fish for them. So I'm fishing with a 13, reaching out as far as I can. And when you only have that line out 4 or 5 foot, you set a hook and it's 13 foot. Spider riggers have done this for years. It's a fight. Well, then you got to start feeding that line down. So it becomes a fight. So the 13-footer isn't the end-all cure-all by no means. That 12-footer, they're in my boat also. I believe in the 12s. The 12 actually has a little bit less lever arm when you start bringing big fish in. The 13-foot will wear you out. It will just flat out. It'll burn. Your shoulder hurts at the end of the day.
No gym needed.
But there is times.
No gym needed.
But there's times that's the only pole that you can fish with. The 9-foot is awesome. It's light, but there's times that you can't reach out there. If I'm fishing deep water, I like the 13 because of the added length of the line that I have out. It allows me not to be reeling and doing stuff. If those fish are really spooky, I love that 7.5 foot. That is my casting rod. That's my favorite pole that there is. That dingo allows me to cast out 30, 40 foot and see the fish and still live scope them. So every one of them is a tool, and the tools are what allow us to do these tournaments and do well in it. For me, and I know Todd, that would be a nightmare if he was taking people out every day and swapping between the dingo and
Oh yeah, that's never gonna happen.
That ain't gonna happen.
I don't even have 12s in my boat guiding. People, because 90% of your clients, the first 20 fish they get on, they reel. Even though I tell them, don't reel.
Absolutely.
So you reel, even if it's just a pound fish, you reel a pound fish up to the tip of a 13-footer, you're not getting that fish. Because they're like, what do I do with it now? I don't know. It kind of reminds me of that video of that little kid that's got that pole. Have you seen that? Where he's swinging the fish and he thinks it's chasing him? Yeah.
That's hilarious.
That one's a good one.
That's what clients would do with that long of a rod.
Yeah.
But for the tournament guys, or just the guys that are now going out chasing trophies, I see the need for it.
Yep, absolutely.
That's awesome. Robert, this one's for you. Stephen Krebs asked this one. Robert, on average tourney day, how much water do you cover in search for your 7? Taking for granted you're targeting suspended fish.
And I'm not always targeting suspended fish on tournament days. I may be fishing structure. You got to understand, I've spent 60 hours of my time on the lake already. So when I show up to a lake, I have an idea of where I'm going to fish, where I'm going to go. And it's usually that halfway up the lake to 2/3 up the lake, and I'm going to start looking there and work on up the lake. but before the week's over, I will have covered every bit of water on that lake. Doesn't matter. Grenade is a huge lake. I have covered it from the dam to the end of both arms. And when it was 20 foot high in the spring, that's a long ways.
That's a lot of water.
You know, I've went 10 miles back up the schooner, and really I didn't reach the end of it, but we were where everything was in 4 or 5 foot of water. So I cover every bit of it. On tournament day, my job is to have eliminated water.
Should have a plan. Yeah.
I should have a plan and have it down to a zone. You know, usually I'm probably covering. I have an area of maybe 500 or 600 yards that I'm focusing on during that portion, and I may have 5 or 6 of them throughout the lake. But I'm not trying to run and gun throughout the lake. Now, sometimes that happens. Dardanelle this year, Plan A wasn't good, Plan B wasn't good, Plan C wasn't good, and I ended up covering 20 miles of the water that day, and found fish way down at the other end of the lake. So yes, sometimes it happens, you know, but I'm targeting what tournament fish are for that lake, and if I'm not finding the tournament fish for that lake, I'm moving. You know, it's just that's it.
Good deal. Let's see. I guess there's another one for Robert, or no, it'd be for both of y'all here. 2 years of crappie fishing. If the guy heard you right, you won a national championship. They want to know, is live scope that much of a game changer?
Yes.
Any tips how to use it for targeting the bigger fish for the guys that's just now tuning in, learning it, and all that?
Yes. It's absolutely that much of a game changer. Could I catch fish today without live scope? Yes. I've learned so much through it, but could I have done what I've done without it? There's no question that the technology is why I've been successful. The second half of that question, well, you know, how do you target the fish? It's time on the water. It's looking at that screen and understanding it. When side scan first came out, there were some guys that excelled with side scan. They just off the charts. Then people began to understand what they were seeing on a side scan, and those separations became smaller. And the only reason you do that is through time of looking at that screen and beginning to understand what you're seeing. Live scope's exactly the same way. You know, there may be some settings and some stuff that you want to change. I don't play with the settings a whole lot. I run it on auto, just about everything. I manually set the depth, and I set it 30 foot out. That's what I'm fishing.
Do you zoom in once you see your target?
No, 30 foot is where I
leave
fish.
it?
Yes.
Okay.
You know, the only thing really that I have to add to that is, and I'm seeing it a lot, and it kind of disappoints me, is that I don't think people understand that the key to finding big fish on live scope is being on a lake that has big fish.
Right.
Yeah.
Like deer hunting.
So last weekend in Illinois, when I was up there, I heard it from so many people. They're like, man, I've been using it for a year now on this lake, but you know, all I'm catching is 1.5 pound fish, and I'm like,
that's not what they got.
That's what your lake has, and
Carlile,
you should be happy with that, because there's lakes where 1.5 pound fish is a dink. But yet there's other lakes, and you can look at lake records.
Yeah.
There's lakes here in Oklahoma that still don't have a lake record because nobody's caught a 2-pounder yet. That's just that body of water.
Exactly.
All right, next question. When fishing on public waters with no boat access and no electronics, what's your tips on trying to find some crappie, I guess off the bank?
Still cover water and use
a good casting pole, maybe.
Yep, and there again, use a jig and a cork. Use a cork instead of casting and retrieving back, because then you can dial in on that depth of where you're getting bit. Because
Makes sense.
Trust me, you come to the springtime in Oklahoma, you're going to see a crazy amount of guys crappie fishing in boats. But you're going to see 5 times that many fishing off the bank. And they're all using a fixed cork.
Yep.
And they're catching fish. You know, me and you are down there on the bank, and we've got our spot that we've caught them at before. And I'm like, all right, you start at 10, I'm starting at 8. We throw out, you know, and you fish up till your cork lays over, you know you're on bottom. All right, now let's change up. and they just dial it in. And as a guide, sometimes it's a nightmare because they're like, man, those guys on the bank over there are wearing them out. And I'm like, yeah, I know who they are. You know, it's my dad and his friend. And seriously, I'm like, yeah, they're over there. But, you know, there again, it just goes back to that slow presentation, because we see it now with live scope. You know, you do anything real erratic, sometimes it spooks that fish. You get underneath him, a lot of times it spooks that fish. So, you know, as far as bank fishing goes, still, you know, move around, just like what he was talking about for tournament fishing. Just keep moving, use a cork, and get dialed in on that depth.
Yeah. I guess that was the last question. I just now realized that. Is there anything else y'all want to add to everybody tuning in before we close it out?
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Next episode. Yeah. Well, guys, I'm Justin Berry.
Brad Chappell here.
Y'all listen to the Crappie Connection, the OK City show. And, guys, we appreciate y'all coming on, answering a few questions that everybody wanted to know from you guys. So
I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Other than that, we're out of here. Thank y'all.
Holla.
About a mile from Big Muddy River, place I'll always remember. Cabin on the lake and a fishing pole. Forever here I'll rest my soul. I can